Welcome to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton. Think about the last failure that you experienced in your business. Was it something that could have been avoided if you had exercised better judgment or had insight from others as to how to be more successful? My guest today on the show is Tony Moyad, the CEO of Tricorp Group out of Sacramento. Tony grew the company very rapidly in the early 2000s to over $100 million in revenue. And at the peak of the growth of the organization, they actually had $6 million worth of losses. Tony experienced incredible difficulties, challenges, and frankly, failures in his business. But he refused to quit. He refused to declare bankruptcy. And he worked his way out of those challenges. The purpose of today's podcast is to give you insight into how he got into the predicament that he was in and how he got out of it so that you can learn from his failures and hopefully minimize or avoid those types of failures in your business. I hope you enjoy today's episode. And as always, please share this with other folks. Give us a review on Google or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts and a rating. And I really appreciate you listening. Enjoy today's interview.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Welcome to Construction Genius. My name is Eric Anderton, and it is my pleasure to welcome Tony Moyad, the CEO of Tricorp Group out of Sacramento, California, to the show today. Tony, thanks for coming on with me.
You bet, Eric. Glad to be here.
You know, in May 2014, you had a record amount of construction under contract, $198 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And yet, you were telling me before we started the recording here that that was one of the darkest times, if not the darkest time, in your entire construction career as the owner of a construction business. Can you tell us why that was?
Absolutely. I just want to reflect on that day. It was not a day that started with us all of a sudden being surprised. It was a culmination of history of what happened to the company, which I'll get into in a second. However, that day in around the May of 2014 is when we actually realized that the company had record losses of over $6 million and with equities that were less than that, and that we were in deep trouble. And we were
let me ask you, Tony, how did you actually feel on that day? What were some of the emotions that you were experiencing?
Well, it was devastating, very scary. And, the first thing we thought was, how do we recover? So I had two partners and we got together and we discussed, what do we do? And, the first reaction was, option was offered by the partners was, bankrupt the company. And I stood there and said, absolutely not. We had 217 employees and we had been in business for some time at that point. And we sacrificed everything, personally to get to that point.
So let me just take you back though, because, you didn't just get $198 million on your books just overnight. You started your business, was it back in 2004?
That's correct. The company started in 2004, and by 2007, we were named as the fastest growing company in the Sacramento Business Journal list. And that included 3,400% growth, which is top 10 in the history of that basically competition that's been held for years by
Right.
Sacramento Business Journal.
So what volume were you at 2007?
We went from 0 to about 25 million in 3 years.
And when you were going through that initial growth, when you first started the business, what was that like?
That was controlled growth. Every year we had a business plan, and it was simpler projects. It was a lot of TIs and select list, and it was a lot of pain hiring new folks and things. So we're all busy. It was very exciting, actually, and we made money all the way through.
And what was your background? Where did you learn to do things like, business planning and stuff like that? What was your construction background?
I have a degree in construction management, and have worked for almost all the major construction companies, 4 of them. Turner was the last company I was with, and my 2 partners were also part of worked for Turner. And so we decided to break off in 2004 and form our own company. And so that was the background.
So from 2004 to 2007, you experienced control growth. It sounded like you're doing projects that you could, get your hands around. You had some of the similar challenges that a lot of folks have in terms of finding talent. From 2007, how did you get to that point in 2014? What did you go through to go from 25 to 198 and begin to experience some of those deep challenges?
In 2010, we and I remind you, this is at the height of the recession.
Yep.
Which started in 2008, and we
all remember.
We were right in it in 2010, and started getting out of it in 2011 as a summary. But in 2010, we purchased a local company. We purchased their assets, which included their book of works. And some of the book of works included projects that they were doing and clients that they were doing work with in Southern California.
So let me ask you then. So from a strategic point of view, what was the number one reason you went through that transaction?
There was 2 reasons. One was that they had work in Southern California. The second one was that they had a very massive list of clients in both Southern and Northern California. And the third was the fact that they were in hospitality and multifamily markets, and we were not. We had done some work in that market, but we were not in it.
Okay.
And in 2010, I went to several basically sessions with folks that were focused on the hospitality, and we knew that the hospitality market was going to come back in 2011. So we pulled the trigger on purchase of that company, and it turned out that it yielded $198 million worth of work that was going by end of 2013.
So from a strategic perspective, the reason you made that acquisition was, number one, to get into a new geography, number two, to get introduced to a new client base, and number 3, to go after a different type of project that you were than you were already building.
Exactly.
Now you were telling me what's interesting. You were telling me when you started in 2004, you were doing a lot of TIs and simple projects. Was there a major difference between doing those sorts of projects and the hospitality projects that you started to get into?
Yes, absolutely. Completely different type of work, a lot more sophisticated. And it's private work. Some of our work was, most of our work prior to 2007, I would say 50% was public works, and we were good at it and we understood it. So the new markets really introduced new challenges, not only the type of work, but the type of staffing that required performing that sort of work, which we didn't have. We had some experience, but not enough. So it really required additional staffing. So we went through an expansion of hiring within a 3-year period. We went from staff members, total number of staff of about 35 to about 217 in a 3-year period.
So that's interesting. So the growth was not only in the revenue, but the growth was in the number of people. And obviously, when you expand the number of people that you employ, the complexities increase exponentially.
Yes, and then another factor was that we had to open up offices, and I say we had to because we had presence and we had clients in Southern California. So we opened up 2 additional offices, one in Irvine and one in Bakersfield, where we were doing some industrial work for select clients, and so that added to the complexity in a big way. Having those offices meant that we had to have new folks that were responsible for the profitability of those offices, and these were, for most part, I would say 90% of the staff was brand new to the company.
So as you got into that transaction of purchasing the other company, Did you then bring partners on board? Did you have partnership relationships with folks then?
No, our partnership stayed the same. So there was three of us. That partnership structure stayed the same. What we did gain from the company that we purchased was staffing. So we did hire not too many, but about 8 to 10 people from their staffing pool who had experience with hospitality and multifamily, which actually did help.
So when you launched in 2004, you had two other partners?
Correct.
Okay. And as you went through the growth from 2004, as you went through the decision-making process to purchase the other company, what was the dynamic in the partnership group in terms of making those decisions? How did you go about making those strategic decisions?
Well, again, we had a business planning session every year, and we did that from the beginning of the company. I still continue to do it inside our company now. And so we would get together with all the departments, and we would look at what happened the year prior, and it would be all tracked in our accounting in terms of cost and schedules that, what happened to every project. So keep track of it in the terms of work in place, profitability, overhead. And then once we knew what happened, then we would make all of our projections for the future year, and then a 5-year plan to add to that. So we looked at things like, our swap plan, and it was really a plan that was put together by basically everyone's input. And then the major task was really following that plan, which we really did a pretty damn good job. And that's why we were very successful all the way to that point of, high growth.
So then you get to the point where you've gone through this transition in 2010. You're beginning to grow as you take on new opportunities. It doesn't sound like you were just sort of flying by the seat of your pants and hoping for the best and just saying yes, yes, yes to projects. It sounds like you were trying to do this thoughtfully and methodically as possible. Is that right?
We did until basically 2011 and 12, when a flood of work just started coming into the company.
Okay.
And it was very difficult to say no. And that's a lessons learned from that entire period, is we perhaps should have said no to a lot of projects where we said yes.
Why was it difficult to say no? Tell us why it was difficult.
Opportunity and expansion. And it was the plan to go from, doing basically $30 million worth of work to $100 million. And we got there in 3 years. We went from 30 million to 100. So that was the goal. And in order to meet that goal, we had to have the volume, the revenue inside the company to do it. So it was an internal pressure that we basically brought on ourselves to expand the company. So it was not a surprise. It was a planned attack, which actually didn't turn out too well, but there are reasons why it didn't turn out too well.
So let's talk about that then. You're going through this expansion. It's an intentional expansion. You're having a hard time saying no to work just because you have this plan to grow. What were some of the things that began to go wrong? What were some of the warning signs that began to come up that made you begin to think this is not going the way that it needs to go?
Yeah. The really genesis for our failure was not being able to keep up with the number of projects as it related also to the locations. So we had projects in Northern California, in Tahoe, in Shasta, Bay Area, San Diego, Los Angeles, Bakersfield, and to try to keep all of that intact. At one time, we had over 20 projects, ongoing projects, and they're all major projects, over 10 million, somewhere 25 million. We had a $50 million project ongoing at that time also in Corte Madera. So this is all going on all at the same time. And to try to keep up with all that really required a lot of time and effort and a huge management task that was just was over our heads. I mean, we were all running with our heads cut off. I have the great privilege of having, the lots of mileage on my on my Southwest card.
Yeah,
and
right.
Free flights and everything, because I was flying down there all the time, once a week and sometimes multiple times a month to keep track of things.
So it sounds like one of the issues then was that with this geographic expansion, the volume of the work that you had in Northern California, you guys were just spread too thin. And was it because you didn't have the talent necessary in Southern California or the experience to run those projects, so you found yourself on the road trying to meet the client needs there?
Yeah, there was a combination of things. The talent was an issue. Some of the people that we hired were not tested. And through that process, I've learned that, if you're going to go through an expansion, you've got to train your folks. So we didn't have time to train a lot of these folks.
Yep.
So they were not trained with our system, they didn't have our culture down.
Yep.
And some of it was, the guys, actually, some of the predatory employees saw what was going on in expansion. They took advantage of us. I mean, we had theft inside the company where, some of the employees were setting up warehouses and emptying out projects into warehouses and selling them in other states. It was pretty expansive in terms of
selling your equipment?
Selling our equipment and materials. Yes, absolutely. And we had more than 2 cases. We had, a handful of cases where that did happen. And this was both in Northern California and Southern California. It was not really exclusive to one group or one person or one location.
So it sounds like to me, in terms of this expansion, there's a couple of things here. You have to have clarity in terms of right client, right project, right location. But then you also need to be able to get the right people who fit in with your culture and who understand the processes that you use in order to build profitably.
And they have to be managed. They need to be watched closely. Yes, absolutely. And, some of our folks were basically going with what the owner wanted. One of the projects, the owner wanted to, expedite the schedule based on the owner's delays. And our project manager basically said, yes, 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 and spent, close to about $600,000 of acceleration costs that never charged a dime. And we didn't know till, about a month and a half later what was going on. By the time we got to it, then it turned into a claim and a legal issue with the owner.
Yeah, that's one of those fundamental things that I always talk to my clients about, is making sure that the project managers and the superintendents are on your side and not the client's side. And what I mean by that is not obviously not providing bad service, but making sure that team one is the company itself, not the client.
Right. The most important thing for us is in construction is notification and clear communication.
There you go.
And there was no clear communication as to why we were accelerating in the first place. And then secondly, who was going to pay for it.
Yep.
And then there was no notification to the owner as to any of that happening. So when you don't have clear communication, you don't have proper notification, you lose in the court of claims.
Yep.
Period.
Yep. So as you were going through this process, then obviously, it's like, there's this quote from Ernest Hemingway: "How do you go bankrupt? Gradually and then suddenly." You were gradually going through this process. Describe to me the dynamic that was happening within the partnership group. What were your meetings like? What were your interactions like?
They were very interesting. It's very interesting when things are great, everybody gets along, and in the moment of adversity is when the real characters of people come out. And so, needless to say, there was a lot of contentions and issues and some finger pointing. And for me, it was a matter of trying to figure out how to fix things.
So how did you keep your? This is the thing that I'd just like to explore. As you're beginning to understand that these losses are mounting on the projects, that your people are perhaps stealing from you or taking the sides of the owners, that you and your partners are not always on the same page, or there's a lot of contention. What did you personally do to maintain your sanity, so to speak, and keep showing up every day to deal with the issues?
Yeah, I love your questions, by the way. That's great because I tell you what, it was, like you said, it was one of the darkest moments of my life. And it was not easy to take on $6 million of loss with over 28 lawsuits, spreadsheet of lawsuits, and say, I'm going to stand here and make it all work.
Wow.
The only way I could get through it was two things. One was to make sure that you have a support system. My support system included few folks. Number one was my wife of, marriage of 39 years now. And she was very supportive and she listened to me. So that's very important, to have somebody that will listen to you. Number two was surround yourself with people who are loyal to you. So I had certain folks that ran away, they just jumped off the ship. Yep. And then there were folks that said, I'm with you no matter what. And surround yourself with the right folks that believe in you, that are loyal to you. The number three, which is really one of the most important things, is your physical being. I signed up with a trainer and was going to classes and doing exercises every morning, starting at 5:30 to about 7 o'clock before I got to work. And I did that 3 days a week for about 4 years straight.
Yep.
And the reason I signed up with a trainer is not because I needed the training. I needed the motivation. I needed somebody that said, you have to be here at this time. And that's very important, is forcing yourself to get there and do what you're supposed to do. And that allowed me to breathe correctly. Once you figure out how to get your physical conditions intact, and you can think straight and breathe correctly and be able to get to work and have motivation to take these, make these very difficult situations and put up with all this, then you can get through it. Otherwise, none of the others matter. You're going to fail because you're mentally not there, and it's just not possible to make it through all this.
It's so interesting there, because if you think about what was going on at work, there was all of this disorder and chaos. And just going back to that commitment to show up to the training, that gave you some order in your life and some structure that I'm sure benefited you not only physically but mentally as well. Just to be able to accomplish something,
both.
Go through that workout and accomplish something. So even though you're struggling in this one area, you're making progress in another area.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the key issues. Again, the support and then the physical, mental health. Yeah.
And having someone to talk to, that I tell you, man, it's so easy for us, particularly I think as men in construction, we're supposed to be tough and resilient and, sort of John Wayne, suck it up kind of guys. But really, we need folks to talk to. We need, whether it's your spouse, whether it's an outside advisor, whether it's someone inside the company, you need folks to talk to be able to flesh out some of these issues and talk about some of the deepest challenges that you have.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to add is that not to do, in my opinion.
Yep.
I know a lot of, medical industry advises that, you get on medication to deal with your depression and those kinds of things. I was definitely depressed. I definitely had issues where I would wake up with, cold sweat at 2 a.m. and couldn't sleep, and I had to get to work and those kinds of things. And I never took one pill ever. And I don't believe in it. And no matter what happens, in my opinion, stay away from drugs.
Okay.
And that brings a whole different level of clarity. And I know a lot of medical industry folks don't agree with me, but But that's my personal belief.
No, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. So let's go back here now. We're May 2014, and you're in that meeting, let's say, with your partners, and they're talking about the direction the company you should go in, and you have a different view on that. Take us through a couple of those conversations.
Yeah, well, the first conversation was, let's bankrupt the company. So we opened up you have obligations. The first most important obligation is the bonding company. So we opened up our our agreement with the bonding company. And just because you file bankruptcy, it does not exonerate or get you out of your bonding indemnity obligations. And so once we cleared that out of the way, it was very clear that no matter what you do, you can be held responsible and you can't just walk away from this. And so after that, it was really trying to figure out if we could make it work. And I was always a believer that we could make it work. But my partners didn't want to stay in that situation. There was just too much liability. So what I basically asked them to do was to give me time to figure out how to buy them out.
Right.
And so we had, three companies at the time. There was a construction company, there was a construction management company, and a concrete company where we were doing self-performed concrete work.
Yep.
And so what the structure, without getting to details, because it took 9 months of legal, to put it all together.
Yep.
But basically was for me to purchase the stocks of the construction company, and I would sell them the stocks of the concrete company, and the construction management company was always mine, so I kept that.
Okay.
So that was the structure moving forward. So it meant that I had to basically do this swap to bring some money in to pay for some of the basically debt that I had to get out of, but that was not enough. So I had to figure out after that how to move forward. So the key was to, first of all, not file bankruptcy, and that required for our construction company Tricorp to stay in business so it could finish its obligations on the book.
Right.
And number two was that I need additional cash so I could fight the fight. Like I said, I had a spreadsheet of lawsuits, and I had to go to work in the legal realm of things and keep things up. And I needed a lot of cash for that. So I brought in a new set of partners as an LLC inside of a new corporation.
Yep.
And that new corporation became the basis for moving forward. And Tricorp stayed in business just to finish its ongoing obligations.
So let me ask you, those partners that you brought in, were they silent partners or were they running the business with you? How was that structured?
They were on the board of directors. I remained as the CEO of the new corporation, and that corporation is called Tricorp Group, which is the current corporation. And I really ran the day-to-day and reported to the board of directors on a monthly basis.
So what was it about you, do you think, that caused those folks who invested in the company to put confidence in you, particularly in this particularly challenging time that you were in?
There were developers, and I had done other projects for them, and they knew of me, and they had confidence in my abilities, and they knew the situation, and in a way, there was obviously incentives for them financially to get involved, but there was also an underlying incentive for them to help me out because they wanted to see me through and continue to do more work for them also. So there was a series of motivations and reasons why.
How long had you known those folks?
10 years.
Okay, so they had you had established relationships with them, and that caused them to have enough confidence to invest even in a difficult situation.
Correct.
Okay, so you got to the point then where your partners for the original company were no longer involved with you. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, they took off.
So where are we in the timeline here? Give me a rough date here.
We've closed in October 30th of 2014, and the new company started on November 1 of 2014.
Okay, so between May and November, man, you guys just that was a hardcore, intense time, just going through that whole process of deciding not to go bankrupt, finding new partners, figuring out a way to buy out your old partners, and then moving forward.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of work.
But you weren't out of the woods yet in November 2014, right?
Oh, no, I was in the woods in a big way. Yeah, that was just the start of of my life as hell that I went through, honestly, for all the litigations in Southern California. So again, I continued that path from October 30th, 2014 to about June of this year, 2019.
Wow.
When all the litigations were settled. There's a couple of very minor insurance issues pending. But as part of that, what happened was that I was running basically two corporations. One was Tricorp, which was finishing the old work.
Yep.
And met all the obligations, paid off all the debt. I had $2 million in line of credit that I paid off, millions of dollars of litigation, over $20 million of litigation, $6 million of losses, cleared all that. And then running Tricorp Group as a new corporation with the new partners. And so what happened was in the new company, within the last 4 years, working, double duty, we've been very profitable.
Right.
And by end of 2017, so in a matter of about 3 years, I was able to buy out the new partners in Tricorp Group, the developers.
Wow.
So I bought them out in 2017 completely, and now I'm 100% owner of Tricorp Group since 2017 moving forward.
Wow, that's amazing. So as you're going through this recovery process from a strategic point of view, so let's say from a strategic point of view, you had decided back in 2009, 2010 to expand geographically and the types of work you were doing and the types of clients you were going after. What was your strategic perspective from November 2014 to the present day? How has that changed? What have you guys focused on?
In terms of markets, we closed down all the offices except for Sacramento.
Okay.
And so the focus and the strategy was one thing, honestly, to reduce the overhead.
Yep.
And basically draw it all back to one location, Sacramento.
Right on.
And the next step was to really reorganize or organize the new company in a fashion based on lessons learned.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What was different? What did you do differently with the new corporation in comparison with the old one?
Several things. Once we really figured out our corporate structure and everything else, we moved forward with the new developers and new company. We put in brand new, everything from manuals, on operation manuals, safety manuals, those kinds of things that you've got to do.
Yep.
And then in 2017, after the purchase, buyout of the partners, I brought in the software program Procore into the company. And for the last 2.5, 3 years, we've been retraining all of our folks. And we revamped our subcontract completely to make it, first of all, very friendly to us, so to speak.
Sure.
Tighten it, and put in the provisions on the lessons learned to protect ourselves in case of subcontractor failures and all kinds of things that lessons learned that we had in the past. And the last one was really just to make sure that we look at a very controlled, slow growth inside the company, and that to make sure that we look at our client base in a very selective way. They have to be the right clients. It has to be the right time. It has to be the right location. And we have to have staffing for those projects before we commit.
That's wonderful.
And every contract, prime contract, we have a standard prime contract that we go by, and it's been tested by 2 attorneys. And every prime contract, new contract that's negotiated, I have to run it by our attorneys and get their buy-off on it. So there's extensive negotiations with the owners, and I kind of exasperate our owners at times, and they tell me, we've never had anybody be so picky. And then I tell them my story, and they say, okay, we understand, but let's just work through it, and let's not go overboard, which I also understand. But all of those things combined have made for a very profitable company. I mean, we haven't had a loss, in years, since 2014.
So then what you focused on then is you sort of went back to the core geographically of Sacramento. You began to really dial in on your processes, and you began to be much more focused on much more picky in terms of the projects that you were choosing to do, and sort of on the front foot in terms of making sure that the contract was to your liking, both with the owners and with the subs.
Correct.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. If 2014 was sort of the pit for you in terms of the emotions and the inner struggle, when you made that decision not to go bankrupt, even though you were still facing a whole bunch of challenges, how did that feel?
At what point? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. At the point where you decided, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to keep going, and you were beginning to go through the whole process of recovery, how did you feel yourself there?
Scared.
Okay.
No doubt about it. No doubt. I wouldn't tell you that, when I was going through it, I told everybody everything's fine. We're doing great. We're going to recover. And
right.
You just got to hang in with me. So keeping a positive outlook. But looking back, there's no doubt about it.
So that's interesting. So let me talk about that then. So as a leader, what you were feeling internally was not necessarily what you were projecting to your people.
Absolutely. No, you can't do that. You have to contain your feelings to yourself, which is very difficult. It's hard to sit on top and know what you know and not convey everything you know to your people. So you have to have a filter that turns all those negativities into a positive message and sends it out. But at the same time, you can't really deceive your people. You can't tell them that we're going to do great when you know you're going to go bankrupt. So there's a fine line there, and it's not an easy thing, and it's very hard for a lot of the underling to understand sometimes when you're down, why you're down. But you've got to realize that you're down and pull yourself back up.
Yeah, it reminds
I've had those moments. I've had a lot of those moments.
See, it reminds me of someone like Winston Churchill, at the beginning of World War II, where, he'd make those speeches when he became prime minister, and he would tell them the truth about the threats that they were facing from the Nazis. But at the same time, he was projecting this confidence that we're going to get through it, and we're going to fight, and we're not going to quit. That's
right. Now you have to do that. You've got to rally the troops.
Yep.
And if you don't rally the troops, then it's none of it's going to work. But it's not easy, honestly.
No, it's not.
It's very difficult, and you've got to. And it changes every day because sometimes I go home and I talk to my wife and I tell her, I don't know if I'm going to make it. and she would give me the courage to say, no, I believe in you. You're going to make it. You can't give up now. What are you going to do?
That's great.
What are you going to do?
So here we are at the end of 2019. Your company is in a much different place than it was 5 years ago. If you could let's just go back all the way to 2004 and everything that you've learned in the past, 15, 16 years, if you could do it all over again, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
The things that I would do the same, honestly, I encourage everybody to make sure you have an annual business plan. So planning is key, 100%. I will never give up on that.
Okay.
No matter what you do, you can make mistakes in your plans, but that's okay. That's part of the game. If you don't make mistakes, then you don't learn. But you have to plan. Number two is that you have to understand your market and economy.
Right.
I've been really great with trying to figure out where the market's going to go. I mean, we've been in the public works, private market, hospitality, multifamily. And right now, for example, in California, there's a huge push to nonprofit type housing, low income housing.
Yep.
And we saw that coming. I saw that coming about 5-6 years ago, and we started doing that kind of work, and we're in that market with multiple clients right now. So really understand your market, study it on a national level, and then look at it based on your state and then local. Don't just look at your local conditions. Look at nationally what's happening. What's happening to California, it's not just selective and It's not just in California. It's in the entire United States. So you got to look at the bigger picture and bring it down to the local level.
Okay.
The other one is really you've got to understand if you have expansion plans. This is number one lessons learned that I learned from what I went through is that you have to include extensive pre-planning in that.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure you have the infrastructure. In terms of your infrastructure, the most important one, number one, are people.
Yes.
Make sure you have the right people in place before your expansion or immediately as you're expanding. At the worst case, do not expand. In other words, don't go and get a bunch of contracts and then go hire people for it.
Right.
That does not work, people.
Thank you.
That does not work, okay? You need to have some sort of foresight into what you're going to do, what volume of work you're going to do, what kind of work, and then hire those people ahead of time. That means investment. That's right. That means extra expenditure of cost that will pay back and more over time.
So just to interrupt you there, if you're planning for your revenue to go up, it sounds like perhaps you might have to raise your overhead ahead of that revenue going up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's a tough one, isn't it?
It's a very tough one. This is where people fail.
Yeah.
That's absolutely number one reason why people fail is because they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to make the investment, but they want to reap the benefits of an expansion. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's impossible.
Okay.
You have to do proper planning. You have to make sure you have the people in place to take care of your expansion plan. Number one.
Yep.
Number two is, there's a list of things that you have to make sure you get right. First of all, it's all your finances, banking, bonding, insurance. You have to have plans for all your safety, marketing, business development. Make sure you have your legal straight. Your contracts are reviewed by your attorney. So there are a lot of things that have to be right.
Right.
In the first place. You can't expand and then go back and try to fix these things.
Excellent.
Write this list down and work on it now before your expansion.
Excellent.
Get all those infrastructure in place. So people first, and then all the things that go into making a company tick properly. And make sure that you're ready for that expansion.
Excellent.
And then the last thing is, I touched on it. Make sure you understand your economic conditions. One of the biggest failures that we had was, yes, it was expanding to new locations. Yes, it was not having enough oversight over new people, hiring new people that we didn't know. There was all those factors. But there was another factor that we haven't discussed, which is very important, is that we expanded when the economic conditions were improving. So the economy was taking off. When economy takes off, you've got to watch out for what happens. The phenomenon is this. You have an increase in your labor, material, and equipment costs.
Yep.
Okay. We signed up contracts in 2011 and 12. In 13 and 14, when it came to executions, we were signing contracts at $1 million, where in the expansion of this market, now those contracts today for somebody to walk in would have been much higher, $1.5 million, $1.6 million, $1.7 million to do the same work.
Okay.
So it caused a lot of failures inside of our subcontract community where some of them didn't even show up. We had a framer where he had a wood framing contractor, $1 million contract. He basically told us, he says, if you make me do this project, I'm going to file bankruptcy and I'm never going to finish it because it's worth $1.5 million.
So let me nail that just real quick. There's an expansion going on. You win a project at a certain dollar amount, let's say $1 million. By the time the project's ready to build, labor costs have gone up, material costs have gone up. And so what your subs have bid the project at is no longer a valid number. And now they're in a position of great danger.
Right. And let me make sure everybody understands that no matter what, they have given you a proposal, you have accepted it, you have written a contract, and the contract has been executed. So legally, they are responsible to deliver that project at that original number.
Yes.
That fact doesn't change. But also what doesn't change is your subcontractor able to finish that project for the original contract amount. So, right. Which brings to the point that we have, there's so many things, but you've got to make sure that subcontractors are financially strong enough to do the size of projects. And that's another thing that we put in place was in our contracts department. Now we have a pre-proposal and a pre-qualification package that all of our subcontractors have to fill out. And I ask them to give me their financials. They fight me like hell, but if they don't give me their financials, I just don't sign them up. And that's bottom line. So I see their financials. I look at the number of people. I look at the size of the contract that they're signing and make sure that they're capable of finishing that project in the first place. So if we have any failures, I'm able to go back and recover from that subcontractor.
Okay. So here we are, 2019. The last 5 years have been the deepest challenge of your career. As you look to the next 5 years, Tony, where do you see your business going?
Retirement, my friend.
You've earned it.
Yeah, no, we've done very well. And I've got some really great people inside the corporation, and we've got the systems in place. And it's time for me to turn it over to a new leaf and new people to come in and take it over and run with it. And it's going to take probably about 3 to 5 years for that plan to take place. We've been talking about it for about a year now, and it's going in place this year, in 2020.
Excellent. So as we wrap up the interview, Tony, I just want to thank you because you've been very forthcoming with not only some excellent details about how to run a business, but also your own personal experience. And so just to end on let's call it a lighter note, what is your favorite restaurant? Can you give a restaurant recommendation to our listeners?
I love steaks.
Yeah, me too.
Morton's was one of my favorites, and now it's equally is the Sutter Steakhouse in Folsom, downtown, old downtown Folsom.
The Sutter Steakhouse in downtown Folsom. If you're not in the Sacramento area, Folsom is the place that Johnny Cash sang about when he was talking about Folsom Prison Blues, just outside of Sacramento. Okay, so the Sutter Steakhouse in Folsom, California. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah, wonderful location. Their steak is as good, if not better, than Morton's. Great service.
Wow. I'm going to have to check that out. I'm a steak lover too, and I'm going to take that recommendation and run with it. Tony, I really appreciate you joining me on the show today. There's lots of great notes that I've taken. Just so you know, if you're listening to this, I'm going to transcribe the entire interview, and it will be on my website. So find that interview because there's many gems in this discussion that we've had today. Tony, again, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it, Eric.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity, and to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.